In 12 years of homeschooling, I don't think I've ever finished a curriculum. The school year is upon us, and so I'm sharing my plans for our homeschool this fall. I'm trying a new strategy for homeschool planning this year. I'm calling it plan as you go. In the past, I've fallen into one of two ditches, over planning and under planning. And oddly, both of these ways of doing it usually left me adrift in the middle of the year. I shared a few weeks ago about how I write my homeschool goals for our official homeschool registration requirements. Over the years, I've learned to be really broad with those goals and not specific, and boxing myself into a very narrow way of getting our schoolwork accomplished throughout the year. I'll link that video below for you if you want to watch it and you haven't seen it yet. If I overplanned at the beginning of the school year, I would break my curricula up and see how much did I need to get done every month, every week, every day in order to finish by the end of the school year. My aspirations never really accounted for the reality of everyday life. Things would come up, eventually we'd get behind, and because my plans didn't account for these life interruptions, I'd just throw the plan out and I'd wing it for the rest of the year. I thought, well, that's no way to do it. So then as a knee-jerk reaction, sometimes I would underplan, but I didn't have enough structure ready from the start to lean on, and then we'd drift along with a bare minimum of what I felt passed as doing school every day without much extra enrichment, excitement, enjoyment. It was just a basic daily grind, and it's really easy to burn out with this method too. Anytime I'd walk away from another curriculum that I hadn't completed, I felt like I had failed. And it took me time, a long time, to realize that there wasn't a problem with me. It was just that I needed to make the curriculum work for me instead of me trying to work for it. I knew I hated being bossed around by the structure of many of these curricula, but I thought the problem was with curricula in general. I thought I just don't want to use them. But I have come to realize that I really appreciate the basic structure that a well-written curriculum can provide. Other people might know more about a subject than I do, and they've done the hard work of making it teachable. That's useful. I've learned that I don't need to follow it to the letter in order to make it work for us. Every curriculum out there has limitations. Nothing's going to be a perfect fit. Every student is different. Every teaching parent is different. And the ultimate goal is education, right? Learning. If your kids are learning, you are succeeding as a homeschooler. If you use a curriculum and you check every box and your kids are learning, great, right? If you end up making use of only half of what a curriculum contains and your kids are learning, great. If you break out in hives, just hearing me say curriculum and you never use one and your kids are learning, that is great. Learning is the goal. If your kids are learning, you are succeeding. My style of teaching my kids has definitely changed over time as I have tried different things, learned what works for me, for my kids, and also seen my kids succeed and thrive no matter the style of teaching that I do. Kids learn. They're designed to do it. You almost can't mess this up. I am curious about how you plan and structure your homeschool. Are you a planner? Are you a winger? Would you describe yourself as something else, somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments. My style of homeschooling, not just planning, but my homeschooling style, it's an eclectic mix, which most people's style is a mix. But it's a mix of structure and unschooling, kind of like my planning style is over-planner and non-planner. It's just a big mashup, but you can make this work for you. Like I mentioned before, this year, I'm going to plan as I go. I'm trying something different. My broad goals for the year make it possible for me to plan this way. I don't need to know exactly what sort of subjects I want to cover in any sort of core subject area. I can figure that out as I go. So what I mean by planning as we go is rather than making a comprehensive 10-month plan, I'm going to plan for just 2 months at a time. Rather than planning for the entire year, it just felt really overwhelming. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to plan for the fall. So today I'm sharing my fall plans, which will account for just September and October. And then winter is going to have 2 2-month blocks, November and December, and then January and February. If I'm honest, March, April would be a third winter block where we live, but I'm going to pretend that I'm an optimist, and I'm going to call March, April my spring block. Our spring's going to bring a lot of big changes to our life, and I'm sure that I will share more about that with you as time goes on, but I am planning to just be done school at the end of April. Normally I'd go till the end of June, but that's just not going to be realistic for the coming year. This is one of the awesome things about homeschooling, right? You can make it fit into your life, and you get to be the boss of your kids' education instead of having someone else decide when school needs to happen. My high schoolers who go to school will obviously be in school until the end of June, but our homeschool for the youngest 3 kids in our family is going to wrap up in April. That was a long preamble to my fall plans, but I felt like it was a necessary introduction to how I got here. So let's talk about fall plans. In making a plan for the fall, I first considered the obvious fact that it is fall. The weather is beautiful. This is the season that my family loves to be outside. We're not hot summer weather people. We don't love sitting on a beach and burning our skin. Does anyone like burning their skin? Probably not. Anyway, we don't love summer. We love fall. This is the season for walks and hikes and feeding the chickadees. Winter's going to be here soon enough, and it's nearly impossible to spend meaningful amounts of time outside when it's minus 40 degrees. So for the fall, I want to be prioritizing being outside every day. So we're going to basically cover science through being outside. And I'm sure that we will cover other subjects by being outside as well. But outdoor time is my science focus. And I pulled out a few picture books and fun stuff from our bookshelf that, I mean, we're going to read books for every subject. So I thought I would show you a couple of our favorite fall books. And then these will kind of supplement what we're learning. And so these are a couple of our favorites for this time of year. Gather Up, Gather In. I find that books specifically about seasons, they always feel most appropriate and applicable in the fall. So this one actually we got free. Our homeschool liaison had a big pile of books that they had pulled from the school library, and we could just, homeschoolers could come in and take whatever we wanted. So I found this in that pile, and it's been a really fun seasonal book that we usually read in the fall. And then The Year at Maple Hill Farm. Is that what this is called? Yeah. This one's another really fun seasons book. And then we have this Berenstain Bear's Big Book of Science and Nature. This is the second time we've owned this book. We've got our first copy when we first started homeschooling our kids 12 years ago. And it was so well loved that all the pages were falling out because the glue was letting go in the spine. And our youngest kids are on a really big Berenstain Bears kick right now. So we got another copy of this because I think that they're going to have a lot of fun with it. And then for math, we're going to get back to our math curriculum. We use Math UC, and I've used this since we first started homeschooling. I love it. It just works. It's a mastery-based program, and rather than mixing a lot of concepts at the same time, students first master adding, then they move on to subtraction, then multiplication, division, fractions, decimals. They all build on one another, and it focuses on kids like really mastering those concepts before they move on to the next one. And our kids have been really successful in math. I credit it to this curriculum. So this is the only curriculum that I really follow. So my 12-year-old and my 5-year-old will both just continue with the levels that they're currently working on. We didn't push to finish at the end of last school year. We just closed the books. So we'll pick up where we left off with that. Then for language arts, I'm currently working through All About Reading with both of my boys that are at home. Like I mentioned before, they're 12 and 5. So level 4 is for my 12-year-old, and then I'm using pre-reading with my 5-year-old, and we're just going to continue with that. My 3-year-old daughter also joins in on the pre-reading lessons too. She has a lot of fun with that. But I started this with my 4th kid, so that's my current 12-year-old. He really struggled to learn to read. So we started using this a couple of years ago, and it has been really transformative for his learning journey, and I would highly recommend it. And then I like to always have a read aloud time with my kids on a regular basis. I mean, it doesn't happen every day, but I'm going to be reading them The Cricket in Times Square. I had a teacher read this to my class when I was a kid, and I remember loving it. And I tried to get one of my older kids to read it a few years ago, and they didn't finish it. And they told me, it's boring. I don't know. I don't remember it being boring at all. I remember it being vibrant and captivating. And I'm convinced that the reason I loved books that my teachers read aloud was simply because they loved them. So I haven't actually read this since I was a kid, so I hope it actually stands up and my younger kids love it like I did. But with the crickets chirping these days, it just felt like an appropriate autumn read. The chapters are pretty short and there's some illustrations in here, so it should be doable for the younger ones. But if you're wondering how to do reading aloud time with little kids, I've also just learned to deal with the noise and the wiggles during reading time. I know it's distracting. It's hard to read when there's noise. You think that kids aren't listening, but kids need to move. And if they're playing, they're often actually retaining what they've heard a lot better than if they're being asked to sit still and quiet. So let that be your encouragement to persevere in reading aloud, even when your kids seem like they're not getting anything out of it. They probably are. I've also got a small stack of books here for my 12-year-old to choose from. I always want him having at least one book on the go for daily reading. And so he made one of these choices. He has had a lot of Roald Dahl books read aloud to him, but I don't know that he's done much independent reading with Roald Dahl. So I told him to pick one from our collection that he wanted to read on his own. So he picked Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So that's on his independent reading stack. And then this is Astrid Lindgren's Master Detective series. She wrote Pippi Longstocking, and my mother-in-law bought these for our home library, and I don't think any of my kids have actually read them yet. So I think the reading level is going to be where he's at, so I want him to at least give it a try. He doesn't like mysteries very much for some reason, but we'll see. And then I have N.D. Wilson's Boys of Blur. Sorry, is that glaring? There we go. My older boys really liked N.D. Wilson, and sometimes I find his books a little bit too hard to follow, but I've heard that this one's really good. So we're going to give this one a try. And then this one, I don't know if he will read this independently or if I will read it to him. This is another book that I had a teacher read to me when I was a kid. And I think it was read aloud to me, and then I read it on my own because I loved it so much. And I was just bawling because it's so sad at the end. But who doesn't love getting a good cry with a book, right? So I want him to read it, and I want to read it again too. So I think I will read this aloud to him at some point. And then we come to social studies. Social studies has always been a subject I find impossible to follow a curriculum for. I like social studies. I just find the curricula is dull, and I have acquired a lot of books. I just don't use them. So we've got a number of good history and geography resources in our bookshelves, and I don't want to buy anything new for this school year if I can help it. So I'm using what I've got, and I'm going to give a fair try to the books that I have. And if they're still ending up not being used, I'm going to get rid of them. So we're going to work our way through this Usborne Time Traveler book and see how far we get in that. It begins with the Middle Ages, and then it works backwards from that, hence the time traveling. And honestly, Middle Ages was always my favorite period to learn about in school. So at least I'll be having fun with this one. And then that covers our 4 core subjects that we actually have to report on, but that's not all that we'll be doing. And in keeping with the idea of using the books and resources that we already have, I have a big pile of Charlotte Mason picture study guides that I bought a few years ago when I was convinced I was going to be a Charlotte Mason homeschooler, so I stocked up. Newsflash, I'm not a Charlotte Mason homeschooler. But these are still great, and I have them, and I want to make use of them. So I had Deacon pick which one we would do first, and he chose Van Gogh. He said because he did that famous painting. Where are we? That one, Starry Night. He recognized it, so he said, let's do that one, because at least I know what that is. So if you don't know what picture study is, the idea behind picture study is just showing beautiful art to your kids and giving them the opportunity to observe it and tell you what they see. Kids can learn to appreciate art if you give them the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to give them the opportunity to do so. We've got 4 kids in piano lessons as well, and that's getting started right away. This will be our 5-year-old's first year taking piano lessons. So our teacher asked that I accompany him to his lessons so that I can better help him with his practice throughout the week. I do play piano, and I have been asked multiple times, many times, do you teach your own kids piano when people find out that I play? No, I don't. And the reason for that is I had a friend advise me early on in our homeschooling journey that if I wanted my kids to like music, that I should not teach them myself, because you're covering so many other subjects at home with them on a daily basis. And sometimes, let's be honest, homeschooling feels like a grind, and you're not all having fun all day, every day. And she said, you don't want music to be something that they look back on and just regret, like it's a vitamin, like, oh, math, right? Like, oh, music, playing piano. I knew I didn't want that for my kids. I knew I wanted my kids to love music. And so we've always taken them to somebody else for music lessons, and our kids love music. So I think it's paying off. That was some of the best homeschooling advice I ever received. And then in addition to music, we'll round out our days with playing games, doing puzzles, playing with Play-Doh and Lego and baking and just having fun, right? Sometimes I forget to make homeschooling fun and playful. And so I want to make sure that we are enjoying our days together. There are more things that I want to get to in our homeschool year, but because I want to prioritize being outside in the fall, while we can, those things can wait until later, until winter. We're going to be inside. We're going to have time for a lot more things when we can't be outside very much. So for now, this will be more than enough to keep us busy for the next couple months. Let me know what you're up to this fall, and if you're trying anything new in your homeschool, or if you have any suggestions to make our fall school a richer experience for all of us. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.